Yeah, so first of all, it's a great pleasure to speak here, but it's also, let's say, I'm not really nervous, but also nervous because I'm not an ontology guy. I'm a pure scientist in principle who wants to build also an electrochemical database, and then you slip into this kind of business. So I was asked to give a bit of an overview on the area of electrochemistry, or the area that I work in, on what exists in terms of terminology and ontologies. So maybe there's not everything here, but you get probably the perspective from somebody who is not from your field on what you could find in the web with the resources and knowledge that I have. Okay, so electrochemistry, first of all, the field that I have, I put it in brackets here, is interfacial electrochemistry, because you can find a lot of different definitions on electrochemistry throughout there. So basically we have electrodes in a solution in an electrochemical cell, where we'll come back later. And also this is not only in chemistry but it can also be related to physics. So I worked once in the physics institute doing electrochemistry, and now in chemistry or in a surface science institute. But I also know people from engineering or biology who do electrochemistry. In principle, if you go to this book, which appears also on the next page, there's an electrochemical dictionary where they try to disentangle a little bit the situation here, and describe electrochemistry from different perspectives, like as you think as a part of a physical chemistry, or that is like from different fields where people work in analytical chemistry, bioelectrochemistry, etc. And you can also divide it in other fields. So in green, I marked now those fields which might be closest related to where I'm working in, which also indicates that from different areas you might use different kind of terminology to describe what you have. And from what I understood already by now is that in NFDI for Chem, that there is a sort of electrochemistry, which is denoted electrosynthesis. And when I Google some reviews on electrosynthesis, then you figure out that there is quite at some point overlap between what we are doing, but also not always. So they are speaking different language sometimes. But you also notice that when you talk to chemists and physicists. Okay, terms and definitions. So what I found, I think here are some nice book resources. So this is an article here from the IUPAC from 2019, describing certain terms, which possibly also are by now in the Gold Book, but the responsible from IUPAC can validate that maybe in the chat or not. Aside from that, there is this very great book from Electrochemical Dictionary from Alan Bard. And Bard also wrote in the past some fundamental electrochemistry textbooks. There's a bunch of scientists from various fields of electrochemistry who collected approximately, so from what I read in another article, because I cannot count them, so maybe 3,000 terms. And of course, this book resource is sometimes not very useful then to look things up. So putting them in a web resource would be very, very valuable. If you just want to look for electrochemical cell or electrochemistry as a term of what it means, and you Google in the electrochemistry book the term electrochemistry, you find a few thousand hits. So then there's a lot of stuff going on in the battery community. So here's an article from Simon Clark, which is related to a big project, Battery 2030, and we get to ontologies in the next slide. And what might also be important is an article, for example, here is on best research practice in energy conversion storage. I guess this also is applicable to other fields of electrochemistry, where we want to know how do we have to proceed in a certain experiment, how to do the experiment to make it reproducible, and other people should do the same to get comparable results. So these are probably information that should go later on into some kind of workflows. The Electrochemical Society has a sort of terminologies, a knowledge base online, where they also link lots of papers and resources and software, which might be useful in defining ontologies or not, or using these kind of things. And then also what I found just recently, this International Electrotechnical Commission, which is more from a technical perspective, but including electrochemistry terms. And we've seen before the ESO website, and as from what I saw, these are very much related to each other. So this is also, I think, a very cool resource. I'm not sure if it's an ontology or whether this is just a lookup table. You're the experts. I guess you have to look at that. So ontologies, I mentioned batteries. Batteries is something that nowadays can be very much produced in standardized ways, also having high throughput experimentation under laboratory conditions, building very small cells and going to bigger dimensions, and also the applicability of these systems is nowadays very diverse and in so many kind of applications that I think in this case it was obvious at some point that this is the area where certain ontologies emerged. So they are in this battery 2030 project, and in the project sub-project is Big Map. And here these ontologies are ones focusing, for example, on the components, and another one is more dedicated to higher level processes or how to process materials, etc. I found also this battery testing ontology, which probably also might be interesting to see in how much information can be derived for that for our studies. There's an electrochemistry domain ontology, which is also based on EMO. So this one is also based on EMO, probably also used by some of you already. This seems to be still under development. And maybe here's something from the biology domain would be the ion channel electrophysiology ontology. But yeah, I'm not sure about the applicability of all these to our specific needs. Okay, I have to rush briefly. So our what is our in our area, what is so complicated maybe? So first of all, we have electrodes and electrolytes. And if you look at electrodes, then they can be of a very different nature. So they can have they can be very simple, but also very complex, and they can consist of very different components which are active or non-active, but which are all in contact with the electrolyte. And usually all our systems, they change all the time when you vary the potential, the main parameter, the current. So you have initial and final states, and you basically always have to know the ones before and after, or how they change. And when I look at these nice NFDI or in commotion, to put like a simple chemical reaction into your ELN, then sometimes you're facing these kind of reaction mechanisms. And when you do a measurement, you basically do not know what you're getting in the first place. So you always have to do the analysis afterwards. And then disentangling these processes, also because reactions occur on the surface and have partial steps leading to the products. Not sure how to do that into an ontology. And then, of course, we have to combine lots of methods from different fields. So maybe there's a link to surface science ontologies. The systems that we're using also not unified, depending on the research question that you have. You use different kind of systems. Maybe you don't use only a single electrode, but maybe you use 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What you want to measure. So one needs some kind of terminology to link all these kind of systems together. So finally, maybe our approach to the problem. So we wanted to build an electrochemical database, and this is where we just simply show cyclic voltammograms of a very simple system in the first place. And we started by generating a simple metadata schema in YAML, which I think is a nice approach to disentangle all kinds of components that you have in kind of a certain system, or that you need to describe to do a certain experiment. I think the generic ones are not so important, because I guess this is tackled in all the ELNs by now. Instrumentation is possibly, from what I see also here in these nice talks already, there is a lot of ontologies to describe equipments. Maybe not for all the techniques that we're using. So there's a huge amount of different techniques that we're using that need to describe there. And finally, the system that we have, probably if we start by looking at simple systems and then increase the complexity, let's say, of the electrode or the electrolyte, and building this kind of hierarchical structure, we find out what we actually need to describe the system. So basically everything which is in contact with our electrolyte. And from that, see whether terms are missing in ontologies or not. And I also think, so this is not yet linked to ontologies, but in the end, I think this is the last slide. I think it would be nice to use, for example, this kind of database or any other kind of database where it's not yet linked to ontologies or certain terms, to use this as a start to test whether the things that are there are sufficient to describe the systems, or where we have to work more to find out what is necessary in the future to describe these kind of systems that are studied at also on a fundamental level. Okay, and to this, thank you for your attention, and I hope I could show you some insights that are also of interest to you and that you didn't know already.
Okay.